Welcome everybody to a brand new episode of Psycho's Platters, episode 133, Hair Metal Finds Part 1. I'm going to get into this in a minute here, but powered by coffee. This is I'm not exactly feeling too hot today, but I thought I would film one here in the Care Bear room, if that's what we're going to call this. I hope soon to be able to get into the other main room and start be able to film stuff there. This was always a temporary location. This was always meant to be. I kind of want to touch on last week's episode, if it's alright with you guys. I've done Psycho's Platters for 3 years now, and what I've broadcasted and how I've broadcasted has always been a labor of love. I understand in premise that what we mainly are doing is kind of an updated technological version of show and tell. And guess what? I got nothing wrong with that. I think it's great. Like I said, I try to watch about 25% of the videos. That's about all the time I really have during the week, is being able to watch about a quarter of what is. I have a lot of subscriptions. You know, I sub to a lot of you guys out there in the BC. So I try to get to as many as I can during the week. And the ones that know, I always leave a comment. Excuse me. But last week's episode about touching on Prince and a bunch of other things, I finally got a little bit of negative feedback, so to speak. And you know what? It happens. That's the first time that I've ever had that happen to me. It happens. I've seen it on other people's channels. And you know what? To each his own. This is a public forum. I don't think, honestly, I'm going to waver from anything that I do display or mention here. The only stipulation, as far as for Paul here, as far as for the Psycho's Platters channel, is that what I do for you guys, not only to educate and to entertain, but to inform to the best of my ability and correctly to my knowledge. I guess it's the old radio disc jockey / journalist that I used to be that kind of does that. So, like I said, I will always attempt to take the high road in a lot of things here in the BC. Alright, we're done with that one, right? So, like I said, don't mind people going off and leaving me comments about that. Maybe necessarily they don't agree with the opinions of my videos. Just don't insult. That's all I'm saying, okay? Keep it as clean as possible. Alright, you want to go on to some better news really quick before I start this? How about this? I meant to announce this last episode, but I went long-winded as sometimes I can, like I'm probably doing now as well. When I get to 250 subscribers, and by the way, since last broadcast, I've got a few more subs, so I thank those people, and I'll be shouting them out at the end of the episode. But when I get to 250 subscribers, yes, we're going to try this again. We're going to do a contest. I tried this at either 150 or 200, and maybe everybody was busy. They didn't pay attention. But we're going to try it again at 250. I have a couple prizes, small prizes, that I will be doling out when that subscriber contest thread comes up. I'll show you what the prizes are. I hinted to one of the prizes a couple episodes ago. So, like and subscribe to this page. That will be part of how you get in the running for one of the prizes, if you already haven't. Okay, so part one of the hair metal finds. It's mostly hair metal, but there is other little odds and ends I picked up in all of this. It came down to, powered by coffee here, it came down to, I went to a Salvation Army. And the Salvation Army here in my town used to be half good. And then for weeks, months, it sucked. Just couldn't get nothing. And then one day, right in the middle of the afternoon, something told me to go in there. And I was in there a couple days before. So I'm like, okay, fine. Well, it turned out that somebody ended up dumping a bunch of albums, which I ended up getting about 20 of them. But there was maybe leaning more between 30 and 40 albums there from a failed garage sale, because all of the albums had a $2 sticker. And, well, my Salvation Army charges $1 a piece for albums. The condition on, I want to say at least 75% of these, after a slight amount of cleaning, would be honestly near mint condition for these things. So let's start off. Like I said, there's a smattering of other things in here, but most of this is hair metal. Excuse me. Let's start off with, from Crocus, from 1981, on the Areola label. Hardware. That's right. This is the front. This is the back. Now, Crocus originally was a prog act when they started out in 1975. After seeing an AC/DC concert in the late 70s, though, they kind of rethought their strategy. They're like, maybe we ought to go this way with it, because they love the show so much. So what they did was, the original lead singer of Crocus was Chris Von Rohr. Chris Von Rohr is on the back here. He's the bass player, and he's the bass player and percussion on this particular album from '81. But back in '79, they hired Mark Storis, and he used to be in bands called T and Easy Money, was where he got his start from. And so they hired him in '79. The first LP came out in 1980, Metal Rendezvous. Hardware here in '81 was their second album. Tommy Kiefer, who's the guitar player here at the end, was kicked out shortly after the tour for this particular album was started, and he was replaced by Mandy Meyer. Mandy Meyer, of course, would have a nice run with Crocus, but for other people, he was the guitar player on Asia's third album, Astra, which, it's an alright album. It is. Alright, next up, from 1976, Chilliwack. Chilliwack, I actually like Chilliwack. Chilliwack is a Canadian band that started as the Collectors in 1966. They changed their name in 1970 to Chilliwack, which it's a city east of Vancouver, up in Canada. The main songs here are Fly at Night and Reno. They're still going with main man Bill Henderson, who's been there since '66. Here's the front, here's the back. This one here being on Mushroom. For me, Chilliwack didn't end up in my radar until, and maybe for a lot of you in the MTV generation, My Girl, which I think came off of a 1980 or 81 album. But I like that one. Now, this one here, Golden Earring. Yeah, I know. Golden Earring isn't hair metal, but I couldn't pass this up for the life of me. This is from 1975. Golden Earring, of course, they started in 1961 in the Netherlands. All the main members since 1970 are still in the band. Their last album, which came out in 2012, was, and I'll make this a nicer title, the album was called TNA. Okay, so here's the front, here's the back. What this is pretty much is a best of special press on Polydor, and yes, it's got Radar Love on it, but it's got a bunch of other songs that I've never heard, and that's why I want it. This is an English Polydor press. I was really happy to get that. Alright, next up, I've heard of these guys before, but I've never owned an album from them. TNT. Uh, they started out as a Norwegian heavy metal band, formed in '82. The first LP with Tony Harnell, and 2 of the tracks on this album, Eddie and USA, were re-recorded from the first album that they did and placed here. The original cover of this particular release originally had half-naked women on it with the band, but it was banned in all the countries except Japan. There's still two members from that band, Ron Latoro on guitars and Diesel Dahl on drums, who still play with TNT. This is the front, this is the back, and like I said, that one there is on Polygram. This one was one of the more unknowns to me. I had to dig up for some research, definitely on this. I never heard of Adrenaline. This one here is the band called American Heart, but my research came up with this. It says here that Adrenaline started out from East Detroit, Michigan. Their best known song was Road to the Gypsy, which was put out on the 1986 film Iron Eagle. I actually liked that movie. I saw that movie in the movie theaters. That's a killer soundtrack. I don't think there's really a dud on that soundtrack. It had Queen, it had Helix, had Adrenaline. I forgot about that tune, actually. They cut 2 albums, American Heart and Road to the Gypsy. After those albums, the remaining members turned into DC Drive, which they put out something in the early 90s through Capitol Canada. But here's the front, here's the back. The one thing I kind of want to touch up on, if it's alright with you, hang on a second. Okay, it did come with a lyric sleeve. I'll show you this. Looks like that for your lyric sleeve. That's a lot of people. Yeah, it's 7 people in this band. Sheesh. Okay. But I want to touch up on something about Rockshire Records. Rockshire Records, I've brought these guys up before, I think at least once. They ended up... Oh, screw it, I'll get that in a minute. Rockshire Records, that label itself had a history to it. That's what the label looks like. Alright. And I'm kind of wondering, I'm not sure if this is exactly a promo. It's white label. I don't know if Rockshire Records came that way. But Rockshire Records, they started out in 1982. And I can't exactly believe it. It says that they were done by '84, but something tells me I think they actually ran their course to possibly about '85. Could be a little longer than that. The reason, though, I knew about Rockshire before, though, is if you have ever heard of Alcatraz, the band Alcatraz, which had Graham Bonnet from Rainbow and Yngwie Malmsteen, and some of the former members of the band New England. They cut their first 2 albums on Rockshire. They were a small label that I think eventually ended up getting some distribution through MCA. But due to, we'll call it bad business dealings, alright? Bad business dealings, possibly some money embezzlement here. The label ended up immediately going under, so much so that the feds took whatever was on Rockshire Records property. We're talking master tapes, we're talking, anything that had to do with the record label, because it was an attached property to this case. It was really, really strange. Some of the people that happened to be on Rockshire Records during that time frame, that short time frame, like I said, I brought up Alcatraz. Chad and Jeremy actually cut an album. Tony Carey, who used to be in Rainbow and Planet P Project, they all ended up on that label. So it's kind of cool to find this stuff. If I remember correctly, though, even though it wasn't mentioned, I could have sworn it's either Rock Candy or one of the other CD reissue companies were at least able to get a hold of the Alcatraz tapes to reissue for CD. So maybe some of it finally got loose. But a very strange story about Rockshire Records. Look it up through Wiki sometime and read it. It's just a little odd. This here, next one, is a very odd unknown album. I could not pass this up because of the cover. Yeah, look at this. A band called Hero with a band called Master Plan. That's the name of it. Here's the front, here's the back. Could not find very much about these guys except that this was put out on JCM Productions. That's what it says. It's Stone Cold Mint. Came out in '83, and it was a private press, but I mean, look at this. I couldn't pass that up. I can't wait to hear it. See what that's all about. Alright, this next one, cut out, but it's actually a nice white label promo. I'm not going to lie, I got it for the cover. I never heard of LAX. LAX, I couldn't get very much information on them except that this album came out in 1979 and that they were a funk soul band. Here's the front, here's the back. But it's on Prelude Records, and that label died in 1986. So, for the Funk Soul Collection. And lastly, for this portion, from 1985, Open Fire from Y&T. I've always liked these guys. I've had a soft spot for Y&T. Here's the front, here's the back. This one here, of course, on A&M Records. With Y&T, they originally were called Yesterday and Today. They started out with that name in 1972 because they were looking for a name for their first gig, and they just happened to be listening to records and what was on the turntable, the Beatles' Yesterday and Today. So they ended up calling themselves Yesterday and Today, and they started out. They were going through the motions, getting what they needed to get done. Their first two albums with that name were on London Records in '76 and '78, but they were getting so well known and the crowds loved them. They were chanting Y&T, Y&T, and so they just shortened the name to Y&T by 1980. And when they got signed to A&M, that's what they were known as. Believe it or not, they're still going, but Dave Manichetti, the guitar player, is the only original member left. When Open Fire came out in 2005 on Hip-O Records, there was 2 bonus tracks attached to it. So if you can find it, go get it, because it's got, like I said, unreleased live stuff from that point. Some musicians that actually worked with Y&T over the years: Sherry Curie from the Runaways, Claude Schnell. If that name sounds familiar to you, good for you. If not, Claude Schnell actually worked with, if I remember correctly on this, Black Sabbath and Dio in the 80s and on time frame, and Steve Smith, drummer of Journey, from one of their 90s albums, if I remember correctly. Alright guys, so I want to make a shout out to the new subscribers. I happen to have this since my last broadcast a week ago. Demise of Time, Matt Baker, The Vinyl Potato, Rodney Parton, Partin, John Wrightson, and I know this is supposed to sound like Poughkeepsie, but that's what I'm going to say, Poughkeepsie, Poukeypsie. Thank you all for subscribing. Like I said, I'm about 10 subs from 250, and when we get to that note, we will have a contest. And I will explain everything more when we actually get to that mark. So, regular shoutouts: Wax Museum with Ronnie Dark, and Night Owl Lounge with Mike Adams, Sunday night, 6 to 9 p.m. Central Standard, 9 to 10 for Night Owl. Some of the best damn Sunday night shows you're going to get. Go like them on Facebook and listen through Uber stations or Tuned In. Some great links there. Mondays, you've got Freak Beat with Ken Worth on the Spy 107.5 out of Tulsa. Go check them out through the website there, and you can pick up the Tuned In link there. Also, Mike Bolia remembers Alan Freed. That's also on Monday night. Please go like his Facebook pages for those informations as well. He is working on getting a doo-wop show coming soon. A live one. So I wish I was out in that neighborhood because I would love to see that. Thrifty Music Collectors Group, Tim Smith and Company, always doing a good job there. Shindig, the best damn English rock magazine, period. And lastly, the YouTube vinyl community. Without the YouTube vinyl community, none of us would be here making videos. None of you guys would be making comments, good or bad. Yeah, you people know who I'm talking about. Alright guys, I love you all. I love you, VC. Take care. God bless. Rock on. And until next episode, hopefully not from the Care Bear room, but I ain't promising. Bye.